Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's event. Welcome to an exciting webinar featuring the Minnesota Twins, where we will discuss their solutions, challenges, and their journey in leveraging NetSuite and Appficiency for their ERP needs. So to start, my name is Clara Sabo. I'll be kicking off the event for today. I'm a marketing specialist here at Appficiency, in charge of running webinars and various marketing initiatives. I have with me today Andy Weinstein, VP of Finance at the Minnesota Twins, Paul McDonough, Principal at Appficiency, and Ryan Baca, US Director of Professional Services, as well as our Sports and Entertainment Delivery Leader. So first, to introduce the Minnesota Twins, as many of you know, they are a Major League Baseball team based in Minneapolis. The franchise was founded in 1901 and since then has won 3 World Series titles and 6 AL pennants. So we are very excited to have them here with us today. As well, for those of you that are not familiar, NetSuite is the first cloud ERP founded over 20 years ago. NetSuite has more than 29,000 customers in more than 200 countries across the globe. And lastly, to introduce Appficiency, who provides NetSuite consulting, implementation, and integration services. Appficiency has a wide range of solutions and has worked with various clients in the sports and entertainment space. And we were also recently awarded the NetSuite Professional Sports Alliance Partner Spotlight Award for our work in this industry. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Today's event is being recorded. All lines will be muted, and we'll leave time for audience questions at the end. So please be sure to submit any questions that you have within the chat, and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. So to get started, I'll first be going over the agenda for today's event. So we'll start with a quick sports and entertainment video from Appficiency. Then we'll have introductions and background on Appficiency, as well as the Minnesota Twins. Then we will dive into a customer interview with Andy, and then end off with Q&A from our audience. So I'll now be flipping over to our sports and entertainment video, which gives you guys kind of an exploration of what are Appficiency's services as well as experiences within this industry. Appficiency was recently awarded the 2022 Professional Sports NetSuite Alliance Partner Spotlight Award for its work in the professional sports industry. Awesome. So we hope you enjoyed that video and that it gave you a bit of insight into what we've done within this industry. And I'll now be passing it over to Paul McDonough, Principal at Appficiency, for introductions, as well as our customer interview with Andy. All right, so over to you, Paul.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Clara. So just to maybe introduce ourselves a little bit more here and some context on who we are. I'll start with that process. My name is Paul McDonough. one of the principals at Appficiency. So I've been here since we started the company about 8 years ago. And my relationship with Andy initially was on, think of it as the pre-sales side. So going through that selection process that the Minnesota Twins were going through as well. So a little bit about my background. I've been with Appficiency, as I said, for about 8 years. I've been in the NetSuite ecosystem for over 15 and I stopped counting ERP years at 20. But been involved in a number of different ERP projects, as well as architecting solutions for our customers as well. So that's a little bit about me. I'll hand it off to Ryan Baca. He's one of our directors on the professional services side. And his relationship with Andy was more on the implementation team and the process to get the Twins up and live. So Ryan,
thanks a lot, Paul.
Yeah,
that's So Paul did a lot of the solutioning and then the pre-sales work, and then my first introduction with Andy and the Twins was actually when we did our project kickoff meeting. And so I was just reflecting on this the other day, how long ago that was now, or it seems like a long time ago, but it was really exciting for us. We had implemented other professional sports teams, but this was our first venture into Major League Baseball. And one of the things I really appreciated about Andy was, during that kickoff, we had the opportunity to have just an individual breakout and really dive deep into kind of what he was looking for, what was important to him and the Twins overall. So, and Andy, I'll take this opportunity to turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Ryan. I'm Andy Weinstein, Vice President of Finance with the Twins. I've been with the team for over 20 years. I think I'm almost at 21. It started, it was 2 days after 9/11 of 01. So easy to remember when I started. So I came prior to that, 3 years at Arthur Andersen in the auditing side, and came to the Twins because they were a client of Arthur Andersen, and Andersen folded about a month later. So I guess they really missed me at Arthur Andersen. But so I've been here a little over 20 years. And I know we'll get more into the implementation, kind of how we came to where we be, but that's at least a brief intro here, kind of on my background.
Excellent. Thanks, Andy. So I think Clara mentioned this briefly in the introduction, but we'll give you a little bit of an Appficiency background as far as who we are. So we started the company about 8 years ago now as a true startup. So we started in the basement of the founder's home, and then ultimately have continued to expand. We now have a very strong presence in North America, where most of our staff resides, but we also have a global presence as well, which also helps with different types of customers as we embark on NetSuite implementations and various lines of services and business that we offer them as well. So we are, think of us as your resident NetSuite expert, whether it comes to implementing NetSuite from a financial perspective, implementing NetSuite from an operational perspective. If you need to tie NetSuite into other existing applications, we do that too. And then for those of you that are familiar with NetSuite or not, there's also a platform that you can extend NetSuite capability to do various functions as well. So that's what we do day in and day out from a technical perspective, but also from a business perspective. We found the sports and entertainment area of our business is very exciting. We work with exciting teams like the Minnesota Twins, and my experience in working with professional sports teams, it's just flat out fun. So it's been a great experience. We do cover other areas within the NetSuite ecosystem as well, but basically we can implement anything that NetSuite has to offer. So a little bit of a long-winded introduction on the Appficiency piece there. I think there's also on the Twin side, as Clara mentioned, multiple World Series winners. Minnesota, I don't know if we really have to do a lot of introductions on who the Minnesota Twins are for the group on the phone here, but part of the AL Central division of Major League Baseball. And maybe I'll hand it over to Andy if there's any other anecdotal things that you want to mention about the team and the business as well.
Now, it's just been a little too long since we've been in that World Series. Yeah, I appreciate you didn't put that we've lost 19 straight postseason games. It's, I think, a professional sports record. So we'll leave that. I'm glad you left that part out. I'm sorry.
Excellent.
But no, I mean, maybe just for helpful, just kind of our size, our accounting department, which I kind of oversee the day-to-day operations. We're 7 people, so we're pretty lean, for the size of our business, and maybe even in baseball as well. Our HR function is separate from finance, so that's where some other pro sports teams may be a little bigger in their kind of finance and accounting area. But that gives you at least a little perspective as kind of what our size is and why we thought NetSuite really kind of fit into the sweet spot of what the capabilities were. Even, we're not a huge business, more transactional based than complex from an accounting standpoint, but NetSuite really has been a great fit for that size and for what we do.
Excellent. No, that's great. I think that's great context and will also help the audience gauge as well. So perfect. Thanks, Andy. So the next part of the conversation, this is really a conversational webinar here. We're just to get to know as we walk through, think of the life cycle of the NetSuite journey with the Minnesota Twins and Appficiency, and really starts with how did this project even start? So we'll start on some goals and objectives. We'll get into what the project looked like, and then hopefully we'll get some advice and learnings and words of wisdom from Andy as well, and then what's next. So just to jump into the project, as far as the initial project, Andy, as we discuss this journey, what was it? Was there a specific thing that happened or a specific plan that was made to ultimately say, hey, you know what, we have to start evaluating an ERP system? Just maybe some context around how this came to be.
Yeah, we prior to NetSuite, we were on Great Plains, and we knew a couple of things. One, Great Plains was sunsetting, so we knew at some point in the near future we needed to make an ERP transition off of Great Plains. And really what some of our goals were in doing that is we wanted to get off of a server-based system and into the cloud, which we've certainly done with NetSuite, and kind of streamline some of our processes, become more electronic. We were really paper-based in everything, from invoices to all check printing. Everything we're all paper-based. We wanted to get more electronic, which again, and we can touch on kind of how we're set up, and doing so now with NetSuite. And also we have a centralized procurement department within the Twins that was using a separate system that didn't integrate well with Great Plains. We were looking for one solution that really would be able to accomplish the centralized procurement as well within the ERP system. So NetSuite really fit into all that. We went through an evaluation process where we met with, a handful of vendors, and the couple of people I've talked to, and going through the process, I kind of joke about all the meetings, and those folks who are on these calls can relate. Kind of the meeting before the meeting, and then the meeting, and a lot of meetings. But we ended up selecting NetSuite, and we really felt comfortable with kind of the runway from taking it step by step to where we implemented the system to what it can be in the future. And I know we'll get to that in a little bit, but really kind of necessitated out of moving off of Great Plains and finding a better cloud-based, more electronic system that could also potentially integrate with some of our other systems down the road, or grow and scale as we change our business as well.
Excellent. No, that's great. And as going through that evaluation process, like the meeting before the meeting, and you have yourself, your greater team involved. Did you guys uncover anything of interest as you went through that process, or found something out about yourself and your business need as you walk through that?
I don't know if we found anything more about ourselves, but I think just realized, we've been on Great Plains for a long time. So what, the capabilities of a new ERP system would bring for us was a little bit eye-opening because some of the processes are pretty antiquated, and just what the system capabilities are as the technology has changed. Because Great Plains didn't really ever evolve. It really was the same from when we implemented back, I think it was 2002. The system never grew or changed, and so I think we really learned what was out there and how we could gain a lot of efficiencies in our processes by moving to an ERP system.
Excellent. So a lot of eye-opening capabilities that probably hadn't been exposed to before.
Correct.
And going through the process. No, that's great. How did your team react to the whole idea of, hey, we're going to look at new systems, and like, what was their initial thoughts on that? Was it?
Yeah, I think we probably had the normal life cycle of being excited at first until people realized that it was going to cause a lot of change and disruption, and that's not always easy for accountants to deal with. So we had to manage that change a little bit, and Ryan, could certainly help guide that process, and through the implementation. Everyone kind of has their moments of realizing that their job's going to change some, but we have been able to, I kept trying to point out the positives that I mentioned earlier, and how things were a lot more efficient as opposed to just dealing with a change. But that's tough for a lot of people to deal with, certainly. But I think we've managed through that now. We went live. It was April of 2021. So we've been on the system, a little over a year. And I think now people are realizing and seeing all the benefits and have gotten a lot more comfortable in using the system and feeling better about that change. But there's a little stress along the way, as to be expected.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to maybe pivot a little bit here and get into more of the project side, as far as, because you kind of touched on it, as far as, there's a change element in the actual project itself and executing on that. So I'll maybe let Ryan ask a few questions, since he was really the one that was Andy's partner in crime, so to speak, at driving this project with you guys.
Thanks, Paul. Well, I will first say that I think Andy will agree that we had something to do with it, but most of our team were doing the heavy lifting. So had a great project team, and I wanted to pivot a little bit, Andy, if it's okay, to talk about the implementation and maybe some of the messiness and the smoothness that we experienced with that, as we kind of walk down this path together. So maybe just a high level comment of, so you've gone through the sales process now, and now you're introduced to a whole new team, right? That's going to effectively implement this new tool, this new capability that the organization procured. So tell me a little bit about just your experience overall with Appficiency during that process, kind of transitioning from the evaluation sales process into the more execution process.
Sure. Yeah, I'd say we really leaned on Appficiency to guide us through that process, because we had very little experience with an ERP transition. When we moved to Great Plains, like I said, back in 2002, it was pretty basic implementation, not much to it. But this is a little more involved process, and so we really relied on Appficiency to guide that. And you laid out. Starting with the timeline and really the steps along the way, what was the client responsibility, what was the Appficiency responsibility, and we really followed your guidance on that, which was very helpful, because we didn't really know what we're doing from an implementation standpoint. So I think the expectations were laid out really well, so we knew what we were getting into, and along with a timeline that we met, along the way, all the guideposts, and frequent communication. We have a project manager, we had the implementation team, and then we had kind of Ryan's oversight as well. So from the consultants that we worked with daily to the project manager, we really laid out what the expectations were and just kept in constant communication. I'd say that was probably the biggest thing. We're transparent with each other when there are issues on our end getting something done in a timely manner. We'd let you know and kind of give you the warning, and I think we felt and then when we needed to get pushed by your team, I think they appropriately pushed us in a gentle manner to make sure we were getting our end of the deal done. So I think we really worked well together. I'd say we're grateful for the relationship, and we kept it on time and on budget, which is important to everybody else, I'm sure, certainly on this webinar. So I'd say it was and have continued. We kept Appficiency on for a period of time after we went live, and have done some customizing, after the fact. I mean, it's one thing to kind of get up and running, but then when you actually work within the system, there are some things that we found, even moving fields around for our payables. Our payables person who wanted a little different look and feel of the screens with entering invoices. We had Appficiency help and kind of customize those screens to make it more efficient. So, I'd say we've continued to work with the Appficiency team, like I said, after implementation. That's been really helpful in order to kind of really maximize the initial implementation. So I have kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but hopefully I covered the right ground there.
No, that's great, Andy, and I'm sure the people on our on the webinar today would be kind of curious to hear from you. So we talked. You led in with kind of some of the change management elements, and I think the twins certainly did a good job of kind of rallying around this as a priority. It was primarily financials, the financials capabilities in NetSuite that we were implementing. But were there? I'm sure the group on this call wants to know: were there any surprises? I'll throw a curveball at you here. And were there any surprises as a result of the implementation that either you or the team at large kind of said, "Oh, that's not what we were expecting," or we'll need to learn more about this or that?
Yeah, I'd say just the kind of the data gathering and forms needed to be completed in order to get all the information kind of from the old system into the new system was a little eye-opening. And we were fortunate. We had someone on our crew that was pretty nimble at creating some good Excel macros and templates in order to get in to get that data. That was probably the biggest eye-opener because we just hadn't gone through that process before. And I know I'm probably jumping the gun here because I think kind of words of advice is coming up later, but getting out in front of our chart of accounts, we really changed from a flat structure to a more of a dynamic chart of accounts. And I'd say that was a little bit of an eye opener for us as far as what it took to do that. And I would recommend that people kind of get a jump start on that. That's what I've told people in the past. Get a jump start on that earlier than you think, because we were really under the gun when it was time to, we need your new chart of accounts here in 10 days. We weren't quite adequately prepared to do that. So that was kind of a scramble.
Yeah, no, that's I think something that we hear fairly frequently. It's one thing to say it and it's another thing to do it, right? And so I think having the appropriately sized implementation team, both on the twin side and Appficiency to really bring that through, I think was helpful, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, and I'll just add too, sorry to cut you off there, Ryan, but also add, you guys gave us the right, the templates and had a plan, and the consultants really helped us throughout that process in shaping what we needed to accomplish. So that was really helpful, because doing it on our own would have been a challenge. So I'd say that part of the implementation, really was helpful to have your guidance kind of walk us through all that.
Well, before we get to the advice and learning, I guess I'd like to ask, so So we've implemented, and I think your eyes start to open a little bit more around some of the possibilities, right? So what do you see of some of the longer term benefits of using a system like NetSuite, maybe in comparison to where you came from?
Yeah, sure. And really, this is probably one of our goals too, which I should have mentioned up front. Aside from just having the features I talked about earlier, really the next step was kind of on budgeting, forecasting, financial reporting, and where we could create some efficiencies on that. We're using the budget and planning tool in addition to the NetSuite, just the general NetSuite financials, and we were able to kind of customize our budget process, which was all Excel based, and implement into that tool, into our financial budget and planning tool, make that more electronic and feed into our financial reporting package. So I think in the future where we see something like that heading is really assisting with league reporting. I know, for the baseball teams, it's really hard to kind of automate some of the league reporting, but we're hopeful to get there in the future. And then also, I think, another benefit of NetSuite is really the plugins or suite apps where there's some efficiency to be gained there. We use Concur for expense reporting and kind of a direct plugin with Concur that feeds directly into NetSuite. So that's helped with kind of automate our expense reporting. And then down the road, I think, there's some procurement punch out features that I think we're going to look at implementing as well. And, some other, suite apps and things that even implementing, Ryan and I have talked about, can we integrate our ticket system into NetSuite, which is kind of, it's a large beast of a project, but things like that, or our, CRM system, how can we potentially implement some of those systems within the NetSuite? Because there is a lot of capability with direct APIs into NetSuite, which I think is a nice benefit that would be a next step for us.
Okay, so now to the gold mining questions here around advice and learning. So, what advice would you give to other sports franchises or in the entertainment industry as they're looking about implementing NetSuite? What are some things that they should consider? How would you advise them on project size, etc.?
Yeah, we were fortunate that the Tampa Bay Rays went through a NetSuite implementation before we did. So I learned a lot from speaking with the Rays, and I've talked to a handful of other pro sports teams that I think, that learning, or even listening to this, is helpful advice and kind of lessons learned. But we've been real happy. A couple of the other, I can just maybe talk on a few things that we learned. That's, how the system is more efficient. But even some simple things that we didn't have in our old system. You can memorize transactions so they recur monthly. You can plan them out for a whole year in advance. We have 4 different entities, and in our old system, we have to toggle back and forth between entities every time, and you'd have a separate vendor in each of the 4 entities. In NetSuite, everything's all within one spot. You can switch back and forth, but it's one vendor card for every for one vendor across all the entities. Just some really efficient things like that. Exporting reports, customizing reports. I talked about customizing screens, workflows, and we've done some custom scripts that help kind of eliminate human error. So there's just a lot of things that we've learned, but just talking to other people who are using the system was really helpful, and that's where we gained a lot of insight as well. So
what's next? You talked about potential integrations with other systems. Let's talk about more from your team's perspective and what you've heard from them, and any aha moments as they went through this process, or things that maybe started off as concerning that then became comforting?
Yeah, I kind of touched on moving more electronic, and one thing that has been really beneficial for us is, it's a pretty simple drag and drop. We take every invoice, drag it into the transaction, and it's all housed within the system. So if we ever want to look anything up, the approval process, there's an audit trail, the invoice pops right up. So we just went through a revenue sharing audit a couple weeks ago through Major League Baseball, and when they asked for invoices, instead of me going to the file room or someone else going and digging up an invoice or 30 invoices, I go on the system, click about 2 buttons, and email it right off to the auditor. So I think people, sometimes it's the small things that people really appreciate that make their job a lot easier. And moving to this electronic process where our hierarchy is all built in from an approval standpoint, all contained within the system from an audit trail. That's what our staff here appreciates the most is just the ease of recurring transactions, but also all the ease of kind of from the audit trail as well. It's really made things a lot easier on that end.
That's great. And you're right. It's sometimes the littlest things that make the big productivity jumps. So thanks for sharing that. One last question from me, and then I'll turn it back over to Paul and Clara here. But we implemented in the midst of the pandemic, right? So I've actually never met you face to face. I've never met anyone on your team face to face. It was a virtual environment, and which was something that was new for our team, or newer for our team, right? And maybe just a comment on how we were able to develop our working relationship in a virtual environment, and how whether that worked or didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think in the end it tended to work well. I was a little skeptical at first, to be honest with you, but and we, from the whole sales process, we started in, it was probably early 20. And so I haven't met a single person face to face from NetSuite, Appficiency, from, along the line. We did it all virtually, and I think it worked well. Everyone's gotten used to this type of meeting, right? I mean, it can get a little tiring, but we made it work through communication. And kind of scheduling things out and making sure we had everything on everyone's calendar, and we made it work. But hey, we'd love to have you out to Target Field. I know we talked about, Ryan. You guys got to get out here sometime.
We'll be out there. That's a promise. I will say that sometimes we did receive some Zoom fatigue. I know a couple meetings we had to take over the phone just because we were tired of looking at our screens all day. But thanks for sharing that, Andy.
Yeah.
Great. So thanks, Ryan. Appreciate that. Not too many more questions to go through here, Andy, but a couple things just as far as, you've given us some great insights as far as capabilities of NetSuite. You've leveraged some of the efficiencies there. If you're to look to your team and see hey, what would they say now that they're they've been on the system for a year? What would they say is some of the not to say top 3 or a few of the key things that they've been able to leverage and learn through this exercise?
I think I probably touched on most of them already. I don't know if I have any additional insight. I mean, I think moving electronic really has been a big help for us. We don't
right
cabinets anymore. The audit trail that I mentioned, I think the kind of the ease of customizing reports. I mean, if you want to, we can kind of really get at any information needed. If you want to, scale down by department or individual, it's all really pretty intuitive and sortable and customizable. Running any type of inquiry, or you can save the searches as well. So I mean, I think that's just kind of the ease, even the search bar that can pop up anything really easily.
Right.
Just all those small things really add up to time savings, and that's what people appreciate probably the most, is just being more efficient.
Right. Accessing the data at your fingertips is one of the key things. At least that's my experience in being a user as well. So, as far as the project goes, like, what's your thought, like, on the initial, was the initial scope right for you and the team? Was it too big, too small? Just some maybe comments on that, as far as what you're able to take on, and thoughts there.
No, I think we kind of, you guys set out good expectations for what we should, what to expect, and I think that was accurate, and that's a kind of, it was a high priority for us, is kind of understanding what we're getting into.
Right.
So I would say, it was pretty well laid out what the timeline would be and what was expected from us, and that seemed to be about the right fit. I mean, it certainly, Ryan mentioned Zoom fatigue. I mean, there's a lot of, when you go through kind of the requirements phase, it's time consuming. But in the end, it helped us get to a good place where the implementation, when, and the go live, was actually fairly seamless, and we didn't have too many hiccups with the, when you actually kind of hit that moment where you're flipping the switch and now you're active. So I felt pretty good about, knowing what was expected and the timeline that we kind of adhered to, which didn't seem to be, too long. It kind of felt like it was right about the right time.
Right. No, that's great.
Kind of balancing between, too much preparation versus, that takes up so much time, versus not being prepared and then scrambling. I think we hit it right.
Yeah, no, that's great context. There's definitely a balance to have the right size project to accomplish the goals, and have the right team associated on both sides be able to execute. So that's super important. Is there anything, like, reflecting back? You mentioned a couple things, like, hey, get in front of the data. If you're looking at, leveraging like your chart of account and some of the capabilities of NetSuite as far as dimensionality or segmentation for reporting, getting ahead of that. Is there anything else you would do differently? I think these are always, in hindsight, hindsight's always 20/20, of course, but just curious if there's anything you'd do different.
The timing is always kind of a tough one. We decided to go live kind of at we went at a weird time, because it was April. We wanted to close our year end. We're a calendar year end. We wanted to close our year end in our old system, so we didn't get hung up there. The only challenge with that was we're kind of going through our year-end audit in March, which was kind of a pretty intensive time for getting prepped to go live, and maybe that wasn't the best choice. We kind of just decided, let's rip the Band-Aid and deal with that time crunch at that time, and that that worked, I guess, but maybe in hindsight, a couple months later would have been a better move. But kind of just wanted to get it over with, honestly.
Right.
So that, I guess being thoughtful about the timeline would be something maybe we would have done a little bit differently had we thought about it.
No, I think that's great context, and it's like, I guess, planning an ERP implementation go live, is there ever really a good time to go live or not, is probably the main question. But there's definitely maybe pros and cons to when you select that date. No, that's excellent. And as far as the other features, like Ryan did say, that what's next, as far as, hey, looking at leveraging some other capabilities and suite apps within NetSuite, hey, maybe integrating to some other systems. Anything else longer term that you see beyond that, as far as, hey, where this initial start of the journey, You've got the system up and going for a year, but just curious if there's anything else like strategically that you're looking at to do.
Yeah, I mean, we, at some point we could look at some different revenue recognition tools. As I said earlier, our business isn't too complicated from that standpoint, but I think there's some opportunity we could probably leverage that a little bit as well. And always kind of looking to financial reporting as well, what we can do differently or better on that front.
No, that's great. So definitely, there's always, it's a journey. There's always, areas where you can then, the business changes too. And so you need to adapt and have that capability. So excellent. So I think that's it from a Q&A context of the presentation here, and really appreciate all of your inputs there, Andy. I think I'll turn it over to Clara now, and just to take any questions from the audience for open Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Andy, Paul, and Ryan, for that great discussion. So we'll now open it up to the audience for any questions that they may have, whether these are for Andy or for Paul and Ryan. So again, as I mentioned, just send them over in the chat. We do have a couple minutes left, so we'll try our best to get to them. So first question that we've gotten in the chat is for Andy. What was your experience with cutover from GP to NetSuite? What were some positives and negatives associated with that process?
The cutover actually worked fairly well from Great Plains. We were able to extract the data, and we had to do a little bit of manipulation to get it in a form that worked well with NetSuite. As far as lessons learned, I think I mentioned this earlier, we built a pretty good Excel sheet to kind of convert our old accounts, our old chart of account structure to our new chart of account structure. And that really helped kind of map the data from GP into NetSuite and under our new structure. The one area where it took a little manipulation, and this is probably, I suppose, a lesson learned as well, is because of the vendors being, the same vendor in 4 different entities in Great Plains, it caused some challenges, and we probably should have scrubbed that data a little better before we moved it to NetSuite, because we brought in, let's say, 4 different Amazon vendors, or I'm just picking a name out of that, into NetSuite. And then actually NetSuite has a pretty cool feature where you can merge vendors with the same name, and then they kind of combine them. But it took a little effort after the fact when we discovered we brought in more, a lot of the same vendors because they're in different entities in Great Plains versus NetSuite. So, but the data conversion ended up working, and I'll tell you what, it was a great relief when we kind of tie it out after you plug it in, and the data tied. I mean, that's been a huge relief when you kind of do your test run of that data cutover, and I know the efficiency consultants were pretty happy when we got that to tie out, and we were certainly very pleased as well that worked in kind of our test run, and then when we actually went live as well, because we did bring over 2 years of historical balances, and then I think it was a year and 4 months of actually transactional data into the system.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And yeah, it definitely must have been a great relief when it all tied out. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing. So we did get another question in the chat, Andy. Someone is wondering, what other ERP systems did the twins consider when they were evaluating the switch?
Sure. We met with Microsoft and their Business 365. I can't remember. There's a couple different versions. I don't remember which one that we evaluated. We met with Oracle, and I think that was early, not too long after I believe they acquired NetSuite. It might have been a little bit after, but that was on their ERP system, which is separate. And then we also met with Workday. those are kind of the four systems that we met with, I'd say, more than once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And so of those four, it sounds like, you were considering a wide range of vendors. Why did ultimately your team end up selecting NetSuite and Appficiency?
Sure. I think kind of there's a number of reasons. I mean, really one, price is number one, right? There are a couple on there that are a lot more expensive that didn't seem to fit what we need. It was more system than we needed, clearly. We really kind of like the look and feel of the system. The dedication to improvement, I think, is something with NetSuite that we felt. I mentioned our old system, and that didn't change, and that gave us pause with that vendor. The dedication and continuous improvement of the system, and we get updates frequently with NetSuite, and they're always improving the system. That was something that was important. And then really the look and feel, and a lot of the capabilities that I mentioned earlier. We could go electronic with storing those invoices without needing a third-party platform on top to do that for us. And we literally just drag and drop, the invoices into the system, which is an awesome feature. So, that and really the implementation too, and what it took to go live, and also I guess the last thing is really the integrations available, and how to get other systems into NetSuite. Those are really kind of what won the day for NetSuite.
Amazing. Thanks, Andy. So it definitely sounds like it was quite a wide range of factors that kind of all tied together, which is really cool. Awesome. So another question in the chat to Andy. May you please cite an industry-specific pain point or challenge that NetSuite was able to address? Would you recommend NetSuite to companies from the same industry?
Yeah, I'd say the second part of the question, yes. I mean, I'm here today because I would definitely recommend it. I wouldn't be here if I didn't feel that way. As far as industry specific, I can't think of anything that we thought, hey, this really works well because we're a baseball team. It was really more just the general features that I've already discussed today. I can't really think of anything that was industry specific, aside from the fact that it just seemed to kind of fit the size of our business and what we're looking for. So I guess I don't really have anything baseball related on that front that I can think of.
Yeah, and just if I could chime in there, Andy, I think as we went through the requirements, you're looking at professional sports teams. There's multiple revenue streams, right? There's multiple suppliers. There's multiple entities, right? And those entities can be very different. So one of the things that I think you even remarked to me at one point was just how flexible, having one platform that could address a lot of those different nuances, because not every business is like that, right? There's some businesses, there's one revenue stream, and this is how we make our money, and this is the product we produce. Yours is really much more dynamic in the sense of you've got multiple revenue streams coming in. You've got revenue recognition that really is based on game day sales at some point. So taking into account all those nuances, I think it was important as well.
Yep. That's a good point, Ryan.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy and Ryan. So another question in the chat for Andy. Did you consider any other NetSuite implementation partners to implement NetSuite for you? And if yes, what made you choose Appficiency?
I'd say when we first met with NetSuite, they brought Appficiency to the table for us and really got a good feel. Paul was heavily involved in kind of the pitch, I'd say, and we just got a good feel for the people and their experience and their process for leading the implementation, which they outline. And that gave us a real comfort level. And we decided not to investigate any other implementation partners because we got a good feel for the kind of the plan process and what it would take, and the expertise that they brought in dealing with strictly NetSuite. Our old we call it VAR with Great Plains, repped Microsoft for a number of years, and they were new into NetSuite, and that wasn't something they offered their they wanted to provide that service, and that wasn't something I was interested in being one of their first implementations of NetSuite. I felt a lot stronger that it would the 8 years of experience that Appficiency brought to the table was a lot more beneficial than someone who was brand new and implementing NetSuite. So we just had a real good comfort level with the plan and approach, and that's why we went with Appficiency.
That's great to hear. Thanks, Andy. Maybe we can wrap up with one more question. Would like to hear from you, Andy, how you were able to lean on Appficiency as your implementation partner throughout that process. We had some topics and discussions around change management and what your company went through. How were you able to kind of lean and leverage Appficiency for that?
I'd say just kind of the guiding voice as well. I know we've talked about kind of the data gathering and kind of guiding us along the way, but also when kind of hiccups came up, or they could sense some stress amongst the change we talked about earlier. I think just having kind of the calm voice. Hey, we've been through this before. We know this is natural. It's going to happen. There may be some hiccups along the way, but here's how we'll resolve this, and we'll get there. And in the end, made us feel better about what the end result would be. So just that the knowledge base and the I guess the guidance of kind of been there, done that, seen these things happen before was really helpful, and I think gave our staff a lot more comfort too when they were kind of curious as to how everything would unfold in the end. But that was really part of that helpful guidance, I'd say. It was the best part, and just constant communication. Like I said, we had the plans in place, so we kind of knew what to expect, and we kept tabs on everything and monitored where we were throughout the process, and that was really helpful.
Amazing. Thank you, Andy. So before we end off for today, I'll let either Ryan or Paul or Andy, yourself, and you guys have anything else you would like to add before we wrap up today?
I would just like to say thank you, Andy. Thanks to the Minnesota Twins. We couldn't have selected a better partner for all the reasons that Andy just highlighted: the transparency, the partnership, kind of pre-sales through execution, and then ongoing. We're still working together today, and on kind of an as-needed basis. So very much appreciate the Twins organization, Andy's leadership, and I think some great insights shared today. So appreciate that, Andy.
Yeah, and I don't think I could put it any better. Just a big thank you from the Appficiency team to the Twins team and Andy. Really appreciate your time here. Hoping that the audience got some good context, good insights into what an implementation looks like, and from start to finish. And it is a journey ultimately for everyone. So again, thank you so much from our team.
Thank you, guys. Happy to be here today.
Excellent.
Amazing. Thank you. So on that note, we'll end it here if there are no further questions. I'd like to wrap up by again giving a huge thank you to Andy and the entire Minnesota Twins team. We hope that everyone here today enjoyed this event and learned something new. We'll definitely be sure to follow up with the on-demand version after the fact in case you missed anything or would like to reference this webinar. As well, of course, if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And also, as you mentioned in the email, the raffle draw will take place after the webinar. So the winners of the Minnesota Twins merchandise will be contacted via email. So thank you all again. Thank you, Andy and the Twins. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you at our next webinars.